Hi, welcome back. First off, this video is going to be much longer than the previous. My opinion on the second game will take longer than 5 minutes like it did with the first game. First game, just in my opinion, there's not a lot to talk about. Everything's been said. My opinion's just kind of, everything's good, this is good, nothing specific. This game, there's a lot more to talk about, and there's a lot more that I like and dislike about this game. The second game is the one a lot of people say is the best, at least for a while. This is the game regarded as the absolute best in the series. And it was my favorite for a while. So the amount of characters, expansion of the lore, new atmosphere, new animatronics, you had to be there to experience the hype around the game at the time. But now as I've grown and played the game more, I realize that FNAF 2 really isn't all that good. At least it isn't as good as people held it up to be back then. And in this video, I'll explain how FNAF 2 is really an overwhelming mess. A terrible masterpiece. First, I'm going to talk about the good. Even though this title is a little more negative than the last, there is a lot of good this game does. For example, to this day, this game has some of the best lore in the entire franchise. The way the minigames slowly led on to different events and you can slowly piece the puzzle together in the night calls, it's just like, it's perfect. Better than pretty much all the other FNAF games. The nightly phone calls for this game is amazing, which seems weird to say for a FNAF game, but in this game it's almost perfect. The phone guy slowly escalates with what he says, going from the basic setup all the way up to being a lockdown and somebody using a yellow suit in the back. It's just peak. It starts with basic setup and explanations of how a FNAF game would work, and by night 3 he mentions rumors that have been happening and assures us there's nothing to do with the company. Night 4 mentions an investigational location and tells us to avoid eye contact with the animatronics as they've been looking at adults weird. And then by night 5 he mentions the building's on lockdown, no one is allowed in or out, especially previous employees. And by night 6 he's surprised that you're even there, and he mentions that somebody used a spare yellow suit in the back. That'll be important later, obviously, but he said it should be safer to stay instead of trying to leave because of how the animatronic's been acting. This game introduces the infamous purple guy, and through each minigame it shows his actions in different locations. Each minigame has a chance to play after you die, and they are, in my opinion, the best way the series has ever shown its lore. Now to the gameplay, even though there's a lot of negative, there is a lot of good here. Like how the mask is a really cool concept in paper, and seeing them in front of you in game with the blackout sequences still gets your heart pounding. And some of the jump scares here are really good too, like the puppet, Willard Foxy, and the Mangle are something to stand up to me. This game's atmosphere isn't the worst, but it's not nearly as good as the first game. I'm a huge fan of the big gaping doorway in front of you, and also the huge vents, so you're just staring into the void, and that can still give me chills today. But before we get to the bad, let's talk about the animatronics. And wow, there's a lot to talk about here. With a total of 11 animatronics, I want to split this section into the Withered and the Toy. Starting with the Withered, and they have to be tied with the original cast for the best designs in the series. These guys combine the uncanny and sinister aspects perfectly. I think they're the creepiest set of animatronics to look at. I mean, the roughed up, uncanny, rotted looking robots still are the creepiest in my eyes. And the toys, well, besides the Mangle and the puppet, which we'll talk about them later, are really basic, even though they're pretty nice looking, but I've never even been scared by one. But I want to talk about 4 that stand out: Willard Foxy, Puppet, Mangle, and Golden Freddy. Start with Mangle, and the Mangle is just the gnarliest looking design, with the ripped up mess that can climb up ceilings and walls. Just makes a messed up sight to see. The Puppet is a dummy looking thing that needs a music box to keep at bay. Some people find him scary, I really don't, but I know that's not the design's fault, it's just me. I'm not personally scared by that kind of stuff usually, but when the music box run out, it is insanely anxiety inducing. Willard Foxy's in the hallway, and you need to flash him to get him to leave you alone. And his render in the hallway is the creepiest in the entire game in my opinion, and is hands down the best jump scare in the entire series. But last and not least, Golden Freddy. He isn't as special here than the first game, but the build up to him is insanely good. Looking back at the night 6 phone call when he mentioned someone used a spare in the back, Golden Freddy appears, and it's insanely well built up. The sound design in this game is also really good, but nothing too noteworthy in my opinion, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. Finally, before we move on to the bad, let's talk about the Easter egg characters. What's interesting is JJ. She has a chance to randomly appear under your desk, and I really don't have much to say about her at all. Then we have Endo02, who will start in Cam 11 after the puppet left, and right before the puppet ends your game, you can see him crawling through the vents. But the 2 I really want to talk about is the Shadow animatronics, Bonnie and Freddy. Now these guys deserve a video on their own because they're around for some really important events. and no one knows who and what they really are. Again, I want to make a video about them soon, so I'll save my thoughts for that. But this is one of the best positives of the entire game for me. This will be a good amount of negatives, but I still do love this game, so keep that in mind. This game's gameplay is really good on paper, but it's so bad in action. It's just a loop, and all games are a loop, you could say, but this game doesn't have the luxury of even being scary. In the early nights, it's easy, way too easy. It's pretty much boring. Only thing you can do is look through the cameras, and even they're completely useless in this game, except for Cam Limit for the puppet. And let's go to Toy Bonnie. Now, he is infamous for being the worst thing about this game's gameplay, because of the randomness of how he works. He will decide to just camp the vents, which will throw you off your loop that I established earlier this game makes you do. You will end up dying from the puppet or Foxy because he just waits there. Another big negative about this game is that 8 out of the 11 animatronics are all countered with the same thing. Hell, 6 of them are practically the exact same. This makes the animatronics feel less unique in my opinion, especially because a lot of these jump scares just feel, I don't know, cheap to me. Like, some of them are just PNG shakings, and the jump scare noise really doesn't do it for me. But it makes the whole overall game quality feel worse. The issues with some of these designs is that none of the toys are scary in the slightest. You tried with Chica, but it doesn't really work for me, and it's sad because the withers are so damn good. The harder the game gets, the more you can point these flaws out. Like how there's a queue system for all the animatronics that work identical. That's how much these guys are not unique. The RNG, combined with the fact this game isn't scary, and how much they throw at you is just the same shit, this game really isn't as good as its reputation makes it out to be. This game is an overwhelming, repetitive mess that I love so much. It's boring as hell, but contributes so much to the franchise it's hard to ignore. This game is still a decent game, even with all the negatives. It's an overall 6 out of 10 for me. I didn't include it in the first video, but the first game is like a 8 out of 10. Yeah, that's my bad. I get this game has its fans and haters, but I'd put this game around like the middle of the franchise if I were to rank them all. Currently, I'm in the middle of a playthrough of every single game, and once I get done with that, I will make a definitive ranking of all the games in the series, so stay tuned for that. But for now, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy these videos I'm making, and please stick around for more if you like it. Goodbye, everybody!